I'm moving in about 2 days if all of this final packing works out the way I want it to. And to move, we're going to be driving, and it's going to take probably close to 40 hours of driving to get to our destination, which we're going to string across probably 3 or 4 days. So there's going to be a lot of car time, and I think I'm going to end up being a passenger for a lot of it. And I'm not a very good passenger. I get bored easily. I'm not really an auditory learner, so trying to listen to an audiobook's not that great for me because I my focus. I can listen to music, but do I want to listen to music for like 40 hours? So instead, we are doing a challenge. I'm going to try to write as many words in my new fantasy novel as possible over that time. And this is maybe a little premature because I just finished doing like a really broad strokes outline, but I always really like to have a lot more detailed plot going forward. Like I make myself a chapter by chapter outline before I start writing because I really like to know the direction I go in, or else I just end up wasting time and not really having a focused, thorough line when I'm actually writing. So the plan is this morning and tomorrow before we end up going is to try and have at least like a 4 or 5 chapter plan for one of my characters so that I can try and get some writing done while I'm in the car. Last thing is I need to choose which character to write from because I've got 3 main characters in this fantasy book I want to write. And I've kind of come to the decision that I'm going to write each storyline separate, like go all the way through before going on to the next one to try and make it more cohesive and to really focus and make every storyline as exciting and good as I can make it. So that way they're like equally interesting. So when people read the book, they're not like bored by one, hopefully, but excited by another. So I want them all to feel equal. But I've been debating because I always thought there's like one of the 3 is the more like main character. And I always thought like, oh, I'm going to start with that one, obviously. But I don't think I am. Like it might be procrastination to just try and not do the harder one first. But I also kind of think of it as like maybe a bit of a warm up. So I have the best idea for this second character, and their storyline's a bit more like it's obvious in the sense that it's a lot more like classic of like what happens to characters in fantasy books. And there's a bit more mystery involved, which I like because I've been writing thrillers for a while. So maybe that's going to feel a bit more comfortable for me, that kind of a storyline. Still haven't quite figured out like personalities and voice for the different characters, but that's all gonna be part of the fun. The journey has begun. We have been driving for, I don't know, 30 minutes, 40 minutes at this point, and I haven't started writing yet because I'm waiting to get bored a little bit, but also this road is really turny and I can get car sick. So I know that maybe like in an hour's time it'll get straighter, so that'll probably be better writing wise. But I have prepped for 6 chapters of the book. So the first chapters actually from more of that like main character of the 3 points of view, but it's the first time that the character that I'm going to be writing from's perspective, it's the first time that she is introduced. So I feel like it'll probably be a good chapter as well for me to really try and understand her personality and her voice and things like that. So there's that chapter from the other character's point of view, and then my main character, Sabrina, she'll have 5 chapters. And honestly, I feel like I'm jumping really quickly into like the inciting incident, the action, and I wonder if I should have kind of more between that, like linking them. But I also at the same time am trying to like think ahead to the fact that there's going to be 3 points of view, 3 storylines, and I don't want it to be a really long time before we really get into the meat of the story, because everything's basically tripled, right? Because if we're alternating every chapter or every other chapter or something, I don't really know, we're gonna have to get all these different sets of like setup, all these different sets of inciting incident. So I think it would be best to try and get through this like beginning section as quickly as possible so we can spend more of the book actually like getting the stuff done that's like the core, the meat of the story. So I don't know if quite that's how it should work, but I think as well as I start to draft, I'll get a sense of, oh, we're progressing like way too quickly. So I'm also thinking about the fact that when I write thrillers, my chapters end up being like 2,000 to 2,500 words, but with fantasy, maybe they'll be more like 3,000 or 4,000. So I don't know, there's a lot of learning to be done, but I'm gonna wait till, again, we're doing less turns before I really pull out my laptop and give it a good shot. It was actually a lot easier than I thought to write on my laptop on the road. Like, I don't think I'm gonna have much of an issue. Sometimes if I'm outside, like the sun can make it hard to see the screen, but I didn't even have that. And I was feeling really good. The roads were pretty straight, like I wasn't feeling car sick or anything. But actually, what held me up was it's been so long since I've written a first draft. I was just really struggling to not try and write perfectly the first time, because since doing this revision on the last book that I wrote, it kind of puts me in that mental space of the writing having to be like final form, versus in a first draft you just have to get the words on paper or on the page typed out in this case. So I just found myself going back through the same, sentences, paragraphs over and over again, slowly buffing it out. And I think there's still some missing. And so that may be like the technique I have to use, at least to try and get back into this drafting mindset. But it's starting to feel good, and we've been driving for just over 5 hours, and I got 1,000 words. So technically, if I was sitting at home and I was writing for 5 hours, 1,000 words would be really pitiful. But I just feel like the fact that I'm on the road and all these other extraneous things are happening, I'm really happy with 1,000 words. Honestly, if I did 1,000 words every day of this trip, I'd be feeling really accomplished by the end. That's like at least a chapter, if not 2 chapters. So we're doing well, but right now we're stuck at a work area. So I guess we're waiting for a pilot car to turn around and go in the other direction. So I don't know, I'm just kind of feeling a little over it right now. Though I will say, I've been doing a lot of like back and forth. Like I haven't been writing consistently, and writing and then feeling stuck, putting it away. I'm like thinking about it, and then like 20 minutes later I'll open it again, having thought of the issue or kind of like the next step, because even though I know what each chapter should accomplish, I don't know a lot of the details yet of what needs to happen in those chapters. But we're almost at the Canadian border. If I didn't mention it, we're going from Fairbanks to Vancouver, and we're almost at the Canadian border. I think it'll be like half an hour past where we keep going. So I might not write until the other side of it, just because I want to feel with it, have all the passports and everything ready. And I think we're probably going to go an hour or two past the border, so maybe I'll write a bit more in the car. Maybe I'll even write in the tent tonight. I don't really know. But the story's feeling really good. I'm really happy. I feel like something clicked in the last writing session, where the direction that their conversation is going, like it has a lot more of an emotional pull. Like I've been worried that I'm just like info dumping way too much, and I'm just trying to get a lot of information across in terms of like what's happening in the plot, what's happening in the world. And I feel like you need something else, like a different hook, to make it interesting, and I think I've got it. So we'll see how it plays out as I reiterate and kind of buff it out, because I kind of start first with just like bare bones dialogue, and then I slowly add in, people's movements, people's like actions and stuff like that. So welcome to day 2 of our voyage. Yesterday I did do a bit more writing done after we crossed the border. I think I got to 1,220 something words. I'm feeling really good about it, because honestly, I just have such a clear idea of that scene, of that chapter. And one of the things I was even thinking about is maybe this is going like too far, and I know that every chapter you're supposed to structure it with like beginning, middle, end, with its own conflict, whatever. But I'm almost starting to think if I should be structuring these chapters almost as like standalone stories, because if we're going to flash back and forth so often between the different characters, I really want there to be like a momentum payoff for every single chapter, maybe with like a little cliffhanger to carry you through and to hook you to want to wait for that character to come back up again. But anyways, that chapter is going really well. I kind of have the climax right now figured out, and then I'm gonna have to figure out, because I want to introduce another character, because there's a lot going on in this first chapter. We're doing a lot, but I haven't gotten any writing done today because I was the driver this morning. So instead I've just been driving. Haven't really thought about it too much, but hopefully this afternoon I can get back to it, because honestly I'm kind of like itching to get back into it. Like, I woke up and I was like, ooh, I can't wait to start on my story again. So that's something I'm looking forward to today. But how beautiful is this? We're taking a quick canoe break before we get back onto the road again. Yesterday was not really a great writing day. I think I got maybe 600 words. I think I'm at like 1,800 for like what I've written so far. Because after we got from Whitehorse, I was really tired. Those tacos were so good, and I fell asleep in the car for like an hour. And I want to say that my excuse was like, I was just tired. I was not feeling it. The roads were windy, but honestly, I could have done it. I just didn't. And I know a reasonable person would just say, like, you're moving a very far distance. Do you really need to add more to your plate? And the answer is probably no, but I know myself, and I know I could have done it because I just sat there anyways. And I was mostly stressing because we decided we want to make it to Liard Hot Springs yesterday to camp, so this morning we could be here, and obviously we're here. So we actually made it at 10:55 p.m. and the campground closes at 11. Almost 2 hours. I was just like watching our Google Maps, being like, oh, we've gone up to 10:56. Oh, we've gone up to 10:57. Oh, now we're back down at 10:56. Like, I could have in so many moments wrote, but I just like didn't want to. And I was thinking a lot about it because I wasn't writing, so I had a lot of thinking time. And I think it's because some part of me is like searching for the correct way to write this, because I reached another point where I was like, well, I have to make a decision about how what's going on. And you know, in the thriller books I've written, it hasn't been a big deal. I just go with something. But I feel like this fantasy book is like so precious. I'm like, I want to get it right, and I still haven't like switched my mind to that first draft mindset. And it's also like, I just need to make a decision. I need to make a decision, move on, and that's what a second draft is for. And I know these things, but it's just so much harder to actually like implement them. So this morning was really nice. So we did get in just before 11 p.m. and actually they had already closed the gates, but there was a person that came out and they were going to send us to the overflow. But because it was 11 p.m., it meant that there were some reservations that had no shows. So they let us get a camp inside of the actual campground. And then now we are Hot Springs, and it is really lovely. And I think we're going to take today a lot more chill because yesterday was a really long driving day. So I'm hoping that I will be able to get more writing done. I just need to like push through this section that I'm having trouble with, and I just need to come up with something, and it can always change later. I don't need to make it perfect the first time. We're actually not driving very far for this first leg of the trip, but I pulled out my laptop to at least try and like start the day well, because I think if I start by writing, it'll make me feel more motivated throughout the day than if I like take too long and then I'm like, oh, I'm never gonna write 1,000 words, and then I get discouraged. So that's the plan. And then we're gonna be stopping at Muncho Lake, and I think we're going to take off the canoe again for a bit more canoeing.
but we'll see what happens when we get there. I'm ready to eat some more like real food, so that would be good, getting a lunch. Otherwise, yeah, fingers crossed I can like focus in and fix this chapter 1, because yesterday when I was writing, I would like write a little section, I'd be like, oh, something needs to go here, I'd put it in parentheses, and I'd be like, oh, I don't really know, and I go to another scene and write like, 5 exchanges of dialogue, and I'd be like, oh no, and then I go and then I'm like, ah. So there's like a lot of like little chunks that kind of need to come together, and then there's, yeah, anyways, I should just start working on it. I didn't actually end up doing that much writing before we got to Muncho Lake. I basically restarted the chapter from the beginning just to get like a clean, fresh start, and it's feeling really good up until the point I stopped, so I think I'll just keep going and things will be good. We had a nice stop. We went and got lunch, and they had these enormous sandwiches I didn't realize. You can see even just the half of it I didn't eat is like the size of my face. But what I also got to help me write and focus and have a good time is a giant cinnamon bun. So I'll be eating that hopefully in the next couple of hours. As I continue writing, we had a quick stop off at the lake. We did a little bit of a canoe, a little bit of a swim to try and cool ourselves down, and now just onwards.
It's not a game, it's a rage thing.
We are still driving, and I wish I could say I finished chapter 1, I'm on chapter 2, I've written thousands of words today, but unfortunately that is not the case. I feel like every time I update, I'm like, yeah, I finally figured out what this chapter needs, I finally figured out the direction, and so when I say it this time, it feels less genuine, but I'm like serious. Like, I think I finally see the full vision for this chapter, and it's feeling really good. When we first started driving, there was a lot of windy roads, and I was just like not feeling super great, so I didn't actually end up doing that much writing. And then we saw all those animals, and I was like so excited about trying to like spot them that I didn't actually start writing till like a couple hours ago, but I've been like thinking and writing since then, and I've been doing a lot of brainstorming, and I feel like things are finally clicking. I finally have a good perspective on what I want, and now I just need to type it out. I am now, I think I have like 2,300 words, so I've technically only written like 500 words today, but I think I've written more because I've rewritten a lot of the stuff that I wrote yesterday that wasn't super good, and even from the day before that, I've like tightened things up and made it better. So I've probably revised, like the whole thing today, plus then added 500 words. So I think that's pretty good. I'm probably gonna take a break here just because I'm starting to feel a little bit again. The difficulty of writing in a car, and I might just call it for the night, but I'm feeling really confident. I really wish I could have done multiple chapters on this trip. I mean, we're still probably gonna go for 2 more days, but yeah, I'm now at this point, I'm like, just finish chapter 1 and like get a solid chunk of chapter 2 done, and that would be great, just having that. But we'll see what happens. Today is our last big driving day. Tomorrow will probably be like a half day, getting in around like noon, which means that this is our last day to make some progress, make some real progress. So I'm gonna try and focus up. We'll see how much I can get done. I'm feeling really good about what needs to be done. I know everything that needs to be done, and it's just a matter of focusing and actually doing it and taking my time, because I feel like a lot of times too when I feel rushed and I feel like under pressure, I like do kind of like a half-assed job where it just doesn't feel good, and then I don't feel like I can move on. So I'm just going to take my time, go slow, make sure the writing's good, and yeah, we'll see how much I can get done. Day 4.
In the scope of good writing days, today was maybe not necessarily my best writing day, but in the scope of writing days on this trip, I think we did pretty good. So I wrote, I'm pretty sure, a total of just over 1,000 words, which feels like a little bit of a landmark to have hit. And so for these 4 days, I've written 3,300 words. So today I finished up chapter 1, and I actually rewrote a little bit that I did yesterday because I'm refining it just a little bit further. And then I started on chapter 2, basically writing out dialogue exchanges, because I'm finding that that kind of helps me focus on here are the scenes and here are the dialogue of each of those scenes, the different people interacting. I still have a lot to figure out for chapter 2, but it just kind of gives me a broad sense that I can think about on the ride. And I will say, like, I really thought I'd be able to get so much more writing done on this road trip than I have, because theoretically I'm just sitting there, and when I'm writing at home I'm also just sitting there, but it just feels different when I'm in the car. It could just be like this slight like car sickness, of like the winding roads, or even just being in the car. I don't know, but it's been a little bit discouraging how much I've been able to get done, or I guess the lack of how much I've been able to get done. But I think also the fact that, if I hadn't done this, I wouldn't have written the first chapter of this book. So that's a win in of itself. But anyways, I'm exhausted. I'm gonna go to bed. It's dark, but it's only 9 p.m. It's getting dark so much earlier than I realize. And tomorrow's gonna be a short day. Maybe I'm gonna try and get some writing done. I don't really know, but I'll see you then.
I had such high expectations this morning of being able to get a lot of writing done. This is the final day and I want to finish off strong, but it just didn't happen, partly because the views were just so beautiful and I didn't really want to miss any of it, but also because the roads are so windy. Like, even just sitting here, if I'm not looking out the window, I feel like I can start to sense like a little bit of car sickness. But I was actually able to get a little bit done when we were waiting for a pilot car through a bit of construction. So we are now at 3,700 words written on this road trip. So I might try and get to 4,000 words today if I can find another opportunity when we aren't just going back and forth on this road. I think I've also come to realize that I'm not just suffering from not having done a first draft in a long time, because I thought, it's taking me a while to get back into it, to get into that first draft mindset of writing messy and whatever. And I think that this is a longer term thing of, people say that each book you write is going to be different. And I've gotten into a little bit of a rhythm with the thriller books I've written in the last 5 years of how I've plotted it, how I first drafted, what the second draft looks like, and so on. And so switching gears so completely to trying to write an epic fantasy, it almost seems natural that I'll be finding a new way of writing it, but I maybe wasn't expecting it. And it's kind of hard to really deduce exactly how things have changed, because I am trying to write in a car, and that's a whole new spanner in the works. So I really am excited to just be able to sit down on a couch or at a table and just focus and give it my best shot. I am happy that I've been able to write on my laptop though, because I played around with the idea of maybe doing dictation or using my tablet, and I think that would have been even harder, because I think for me writing on my computer is just but I can type pretty fast. It just feels the smoothest. It feels like I can get my ideas onto the page without as much in between, if that makes sense. We are almost there. We have less than an hour. I have not done any more writing. I don't think I'm gonna do any more writing, unfortunately. It's just so windy, and also I'm exhausted. The small part of me was wondering whether this was even worth it, because we have been driving for 5 days, and I know that trying to write, even though necessarily I maybe didn't do that much writing, it was on my mind for a lot of it. But I think it also kept me from being bored. I was thinking about my book, I was thinking about, writing, and even if I was procrastinating, it's what else would I really have done? So there's no regret there. I will say though, I think it did tire me out more than if I'd just been sitting here, because one thing that I like didn't really think about was fantasy is a lot of energy. Like, it takes a lot of energy to write fantasy. Like, I've been writing thrillers in like more of a contemporary setting where, you know, you're constrained by the customs of like contemporary life. And so at the same time, you're constricted by those things, but also like it's less to have to think about. Like, there are so many decisions when writing fantasy, from just the mundane day to day to how the systems work, to the customs, to the religions, to everything. And every time you're making a real decision and you have to think about that decision, and then there's so many more ways for plot holes to happen just in like the world building aspect of things, that like when you're writing a contemporary book, it's like, yeah, these are just like, this is just how life is, and you're kind of within the system. So I think it is just a lot more work with fantasy, where you have the freedom of just like, you get to do whatever you want, but also you have to make so many decisions, and it almost gives me a little bit of like decision fatigue in a good way, because I think it's coming together well, at least the first chapter. I won't get ahead of myself, but it is a lot of work, and I am definitely going to keep writing, maybe this evening, maybe tomorrow, once I can like shower, relax, unpack a bit. But I think that this was overall successful. Like, I'm happy I tried my best to write on this road trip, even if, looking at the numbers wise, like I could write 3,700 words in a day if that's what I was focusing on normally at home. But, you know, it is what it is. And who knows if I would have gotten this first chapter the way it is now if I hadn't done it on this journey here. Like, if I'd been at home, maybe it would have been written differently, and I like the way it is now. So in any case, thanks for following me on this really long road trip, and I'll see you next time.